Good morning, everybody. I hope this video finds you well. Today, I would like to talk about China next. China next. Meaning, China is a pretty big country. And it's much bigger, more technologically advanced, more capable, with a much higher standard of living than anything that America or Americans can even conceive. It's stronger, more powerful, more industrious, better trained than anything that Americans can possibly conceive. Now, you have to keep that in mind when you listen to what I'm talking about. These are fundamentals. If you don't understand that, then you should get on a plane and come to China. Stop regurgitating whatever narratives you're believing. I'm going to talk a little bit about narratives first, a little digression. I've never been to the Ukraine, yet I read a lot of Ukrainian news, both from the propaganda outlets and from the alternative sources. And I've come to my own conclusions based upon things that feel right to me, the things that I want to believe, perhaps. And that's dangerous, because were I to go to Ukraine, my impressions would probably be unlike either sides of the coin. When I moved to American Samoa and I was living in Talua, which was outside of Pago Pago, my images, before I moved there, my images of what it was like was completely off the wall and did not resemble it one iota, not even one smidgen. That experience has colored my ideas of what life on an island is and what life in another country is. So when you guys listen to what I have to say here, please understand that I'm talking as an experienced person in O&I, Majestic, that I know a little bit about global politics. I know nothing about diplomacy. Well, maybe I know a little bit about diplomacy, but not very much. And I'm physically inside of China. Been here for nearly 20 years. So I'm speaking from my experiences, from what I observe. And I hope to give people an idea of what I'm seeing. Obviously, some of the things that I see are in alignment to what other people see. You can go on YouTube and see all kinds of people like Hambawan, who shows pictures of him walking around in his fifth-tier city and how nice and new it is. And you can see other videos of other Chinese expats as they go around showing you this and that, oohing and aahing. I can do that too, though my world is different from theirs. I'm not a 20-something guy oohing and aahing and how great China is, in so much as I'm an older man with a family running businesses inside of China. It's a different narrative, a different exposure. Nevertheless, you have to keep in mind that my experiences and my interpretations of those experiences might be of value Might be of value to you, might be of value to those who you care about. And that is why I'm presenting them here. A lot of the alternative websites, and I agree, that the United States is pivoting to Asia just as according to plan. There's some debate onto why it's doing it. The general consensus is, and I happen to agree with it, is that they're on autopilot being run by some very, very confused individuals or people who have delusions of power. Whatever it is, it's all or nothing. The United States will become number one, or else it will destroy the world in the process. And that's pretty much, more or less, the beliefs system, and and I'm pretty much going with it. A couple of people, notably Scott Ritter and Gonzalo Lira, are arguing that the pivot of Asia is to happen next, primarily because America, with all of its outlays, cannot really suppress Russia. Russia seems to be immune to it. The only thing that they can control is the propaganda narrative, and they're doing a very good job. And so they've concluded that the World War III is one which is a information war. I disagree. World War III has been in process for some time. It's a biological war. Which may go nuclear. And they also argue that this war is going to pivot towards China and the Asian Pacific. And I agree with that as well. Every indication, without exception, points in that direction. So what I'm going to talk about here is the fundamental understanding that these are truisms. We will start from the truisms. Number one, the United States is saying exactly what it wants. It wants a unipolarity, a rules-based order, where there's one country that makes the rules and changes them as it feels fit. There is no longer any United Nations. So far, point number two, is that the United States and its proxy nations are all leading this charge. Proxy nations are, of course, Europe, with Japan and Australia and a couple of stragglers. The rest of the nations are multipolar. They wish a united nation to be ruling the world. So those are the dividing lines. And if you believe that the United Nations holds no value, as many American conservatives do, then you will be on the side that believes the United States needs to be number one in all things and will have to destroy the rest of the world to maintain that. Because the United States has created a situation where there's no win-win. It's either all or nothing. That is dangerous. So you have to believe, number three, that the United States must obtain this goal because it believes that it's all or nothing. And therefore, we're talking about number four. In order to regain control of the world, it has to destroy its competition, which is Russia, China, India, and Iran. So pause before you go further in this video. You can turn it off if you disagree with those 4 points. United States wants a unipolar world. The rest of the world doesn't. Needs to fight a war in order to achieve those goals, because the rest of the world is not agreeing to fall under that rules-based order. They're trying to suppress China, or they are trying right now to suppress Russia. It is failing. And they're going to move to China. If you disagree with any of that, I think it's a total of 8 points right now. 8. If you disagree with any of those, you need to stop right now, because that's the entire premise of this little chat, this little discussion. Yesterday, I watched a YouTube video by Gonzalo Lira, in which case he says that America is going to pivot now to China because it knows it can't fight Russia. I disagree on that. Not that they're going to pivot. Of course they're going to pivot. I'm disagreeing in that it's because the reasons behind it. I argue that this has been the intention all along. It's really a matter of a coin flip between Russia or China who was going to be first. I think the initial plan was for China to be first, and that completely failed under Trump over and over again. So they went and continued the plan with Russia, and that is failing. Now, of course, if you're listening to the American news or the Western news, you know, it's not failing. Everything is fine and dandy. And those leaders who are believing all the propagandized narratives believe so as well, and they think that they're going to hop on the winning the bandwagon, and follow the United States wherever it goes, which will probably be in the gutter. But so it's pivoting to China, pivoting to Asia. This is particularly dangerous because, as I've said, not only do I and others realize that this is what's next, but so does Russia and China simultaneously. So I'm going to now lay out some stuff that I've mentioned before, but I haven't put out so vociferously, so clearly. And that is, number one, and I think all of you can agree, that China handles things differently than Russia does, because they're culturally different, geographically different, and have different motivations. That's the first thing. Again, if you disagree with what I have to say, turn off the video. China and Russia are two different things. They're different from the United States. 3 different things. So when you're dealing with China, you're going to deal with something different. The second thing I'm going to say on this track is that the United States tried to suppress China already, starting in 2014, ramping up through 2017, becoming an insane level in 2019. And of course, I argue that all the concurrent events leading up to this are all part of the suppression. Whether it's trade war, hybrid war, bio war, whatever war it may be, it's all up to suppressing China, and it's failed. Which explains why, number 3, China is at DEFCON, just like Russia is. It's a high state of military readiness. You have to understand that. Just because the United States isn't at a high state of readiness doesn't mean that the rest of the world isn't. And China, what you see with all this lockdowns and coronavirus and all this stuff, is simply because they are in a military state. You may not want to believe that, you may not like to believe that, but I'm telling you, as a person who's here, that's what's going on. See, if you look at things without knowing the full picture, it will look strange to you. Which is why, to a lot of Americans, China seems strange. Why are they doing that? It's only a light flu, they argue. But it's not a light flu for Chinese. The bombardment of dangerous pathogens have continued unabated on China. And China That's why China's at a high state of alert right now. While it's on a high state of alert, America, and I'm saying, you know, let's just cut away the bullshit. It's America, using proxy nations, is going to create an event. Again, the creation of this event, led by the United States, is a foregone conclusion. It would be a miracle to prevent this thing from happening. So it's already, there's all kinds of avenues in place for them to attack in various areas. China has been picking off one by one all these areas where there might be some area to create a event. Now we know how the event will manifest. There will be sanctions and there will be stopping of trade. And there will be an anti-China propaganda onslaught. We know this. If you are surprised when it happens, you are a fucking fool. I'm telling you right up straight. That's what's going to happen. We're going to do it. The United States is going to do it. They're going to do something. They're going to cross a red line. They're going to do something. They're going to provoke China. And whether China does nothing or China does something is immaterial. There will be sanctions. There will be a cut down in trade. Anybody who's trading with China will end up stop. There will be all kinds of stuff. It may be hot. It may be cold. It may be all kinds of stuff. But that's in the works. The only difference is where I think that the big surprise for the United States is the realization that China's reaction will probably be either extremely fierce, that the United States is not able to handle, or extremely soft, meaning they're just going to let America do things. What America needs is a dial where they can cause China to do certain things to a point that enables American advantage. That's the trick. And that's what they're trying to do. And that's why they've got, they're trying to pivot for nuclear weapons over in Japan, and and the Morrison regime, it's a regime, the Morrison regime, and the United States proxy nation of Australia, because Australia is a regime owned lock, stock, and barrel by the United States. And if you don't understand that, you need to start studying some history, guys. So that's probably what's going to happen. There's going to be a proxy going to do some shit, and then China's either going to be its light switch, either all on or all off. So I'm taking it step by step. I think it's all pretty much well assumed throughout most of the alternative media that that's the plan. The United States is now going to start concentrating on China, using its massive propaganda machine to further isolate China, and eventually will come up with an excuse that will serve to isolate everything going on in China. Right now, it's trying to do that with Europe. China still trades with Europe. I'm still trading with Europe, but they want to stop that. So, there shouldn't be anything surprising in that. Now, the part that I always try to discuss, and it's not well received, is that China is a light switch. It's not very well received because the rest of the world is so dumbed down by American propaganda, they don't understand how lethal China is. Historically, Chinese soldiers would tie hand grenades to themselves and throw themselves at enemy troops. Historically, Chinese soldiers would run up to pillboxes and machine gun nests and block the window as the machine gun tries to fire through their body so that the rest of the squad can take over the nest. Historically, Chinese would sacrifice themselves and their families for their country. If you think that the Middle East is fearless about going to heaven and getting the 70-some virgins, you ain't seen nothing yet. The Chinese are serious, deadly people. And your images of them, while be very nice, you're like, well, they're just businessmen. They're just businessmen. They're just businessmen. No. The Chinese culture is something that Americans and the West cannot fathom. They cannot understand. Because it's totally alien. You just don't see it. And as I've argued repeatedly, in China, everybody learns military discipline in first grade. They know how to march, they know how to salute, they know how to operate in squads. Throughout the entire elementary, middle school, and high school years, they're learning paramilitary training, and then they go into actual training into the military for 2 years. Then they can live regular lives. This has developed over time, and it's a fairly recent development, I'd say over the last 10 years. So those of you who said, well, I was in China 30 years ago, and therefore, they didn't do this and they didn't do that. China 30 years ago is not China today. China today is a threatened nation. Everybody in China knows about the 100 years of humiliation, and they are not going to allow that to occur. They will die first. And they will fucking slaughter you without a moment's notice. So if you think that China will show restraint in dealing with military measures, you are delusional. They will slaughter you. They will pick you up and pull your arms and legs off. They will fucking kill you. You do not want to mess with China. You do not want to mess with China. You do not want to mess with China. I hope I made my point. It's a warning. It's not going to be heard by anybody. How many people get this channel? 30? How many people watch CNN, Fox News? Little voice in the wilderness saying, people, you are going to die. So, the United States is going to provoke an event. And then, independent of how China reacts to that event, independent to how it reacts, harsh, not harsh, a whole bunch of things are going to start going into movement. The event may be in Taiwan, the event may be in the Solomons, the event may be in Xinjiang, the event may be in Tibet, the event may be in Hong Kong. Who knows what the event may be? But it's going to cause something. And China's reaction will either be nothing or very fierce. It will not be, my prediction is it will not be a dial. Because in order to provoke China, they have to do something bad. If not, they'll create something bad and blame it on China. It's the historical norm. I can tell you from my experience with China that China is aware of this and they have systems in place to handle it. The entire idea how they're going to handle it is not one of escalation. It's one that will create a series of events to work. So the moment it happens, there's a clock, and a series of events will occur. Like I said, and now I'm going to talk about the entire point. You may disagree with what I'm saying, and you may really hate to hear that China is capable and lethal. You probably don't want to hear that. Sorry. It's the truth. But now I want to talk a little bit about what happens when the on-off switch goes on. If the light switch goes on, you will not want to live in the world that results after it. If you're part of the West, there is a series of very, very curious measures, and the fall will be sudden. It will be a fiasco. It may be economic, it may be nuclear, it may be biological. But you do not want to be part of the West if a light switch is flicked. Can't predict the future, but I can tell you that it'll be very bad. Now, I wrote other videos that talked about the remote viewing of 2025. These were subsequently banned. What do you think the remote viewers had to say about 2025? Did they say how strong America was? How strong the West was? What about the historical extrapolations from the generational turnings? Did they say that America would be stronger and better and control the world? Look at the behaviors of the United States right now. Do they look like they're people who are planning for a prosperous future when you see what Congress is doing and spending? When you see how the military is fighting the Russians in the proxy war of the Ukraine, and you know the full story, does it look like an offensive, successful campaign? The only thing that seems to be successful right now is the propagandized narratives. Sure, there's other things that are coming into play, like the United States has just successfully managed to fly a hypervelocity missile 10 years after Russia and China launched theirs. So maybe America will start producing hypervelocity missiles. But that's too little too late. The situation that you see right now is one of the game table has been laid out. The dinner's about ready to be served. You can smell the food in the kitchen, and the servants are beginning to bring out the dishes. We know what's going to happen next. We just don't know. We know what dishes look like. We can smell what's brewing in the kitchen. The people are sitting and the participants already know where their seats are at the table. And the waiters and waitresses are bringing the dishes to the table. We just don't know what the dishes are. It's very close. And I argue, and I do, I argue that soon the dishes will be put on the table. We already know that certain members at the table will not eat certain foods. We already know that certain people at the table automatically go for the meat and potatoes. We know what certain people are going to do. We assume what other people are going to do. And that's what's going on right now. But the purpose of this entire video is to say that unless you're living in China and have a first-hand experience in China, you are just hearing second-hand from other people. You're hearing it from me, and I'm trying to give it to you straight. China is an on-off switch. And if you try to pull a Ukraine on China, they will react as they have already decided to react. And my guess would be that you have to do something particularly bad to cause them to react harshly. But if they react harshly, they go all in. I mean, they go all in. And so you need to be prepared for that. Also recognize too that whether China reacts or not, the United States is going to set forth its harshest sanctions yet, and it's going to start seizing Chinese assets and do all kinds of stuff. You know that's in the works right now, right? The only thing that China can say is, okay, you do that, then this is what we're going to do. In which case, I think that the American leadership has no idea just how damaging a conflict with China will be. They think that China can be isolated just like Russia can be isolated. Russia is not isolated, is it? Russia is not collapsing, is it? And China is the stronger of the two. You try to mess with China and it's a new world for the United States. And looking at a bigger picture, of course, the United States has to do something about China because that is the key to open the door to the new reality that all the world will have. China is the key. The United States is going to do what it's supposed to do. It's going to do its machinations. It's going to set up its calliope of propaganda, screaming bad China, evil China, bad China, evil China. So what? That's what they've been doing for the longest time. And China's going to be like, what happens when that button's pushed? I don't know. But I guarantee that it will not be pleasant. The cell phone that you have right now may be the last cell phone you will ever own.